To help me with the drawing, I have my backyard bird drawing guide, as well as an image of the bird. I will be referring to both of these throughout the drawing. When picking an image for a bird, it works best if you pick one where the bird is actually standing on something, a stump or a branch, not flying. Also, a single bird works best rather than multiple birds. To draw our bird, we're gonna kind of just start with the basic shapes, not trying to draw all those details yet. So to make this bird, we're gonna make that oval for the body first. Most birds, you can pretty much start with this oval or almost like a teardrop shape. Then I like to add the tail next. So this bird, if you look, the tail is right out the back. So we'll add almost like a little rectangle shape for the tail. After the tail, we're gonna add the head, and I'm just gonna make the outside shape of the head, not the beak yet. So just almost like a half circle for that head shape. Then we can add a little beak right at the top. Just make your little triangle for the beak. I know it's hard to see because this one has black feathers, but we do have a little eye on there too. The wings often are on about half of the body, so really look at your photo and see where the wing is on the bird. Don't worry if it doesn't look exactly like the photo, just trying to draw those shapes. And we want to make it look like our bird is not just floating in the air, so we're definitely going to draw that branch on our bird. And then to make it look like it's sitting on a branch, don't just draw the little feet kind of on the branch. You want it to look like those feet are wrapping around the branch. So I'm gonna go here and just have those little toes curved onto the branch a little bit more, and it'll make it look like that bird is actually hanging onto the branch. Sometimes there's even some little feathers underneath the body, so you can draw those as well. This bird, it must be springtime, so there are some little leaves and flowers. You don't need to make your picture look exactly like the photo, but adding a few details in the background will also help add some interest. So once you feel like you have your drawing done in pencil, then we will move to oil pastel. When drawing your bird, it is also important before you start coloring to add some details. Like on this one, the feathers, the black part kind of comes down a little bit. There's some orange on the wing and some pieces that are white on the wing. So I kind of drew those in a little bit. They don't have to be exact, but it will help with coloring. Other birds like blue jays or even cardinals, you might have to add to the head to add some features so it actually looks like that bird. Some might want to have the beak open instead of closed. That's okay if you do that, even if your picture doesn't show it. Let's though get started on coloring. So coloring your bird, I would start with your lightest colors first. And when you're doing oil pastels, you don't want to color lightly. That might be okay for crayons, but for oil pastel, we want to really press hard and go slow to cover your paper with oil pastel and add a really thick layer of oil pastel so it looks almost more like paint instead of like a crayon. Instead of just coloring it all in with one color, it will look more realistic if you mix and kind of blend those colors. So I could take this dark orange and put it right on top with the light orange. And if you feel like maybe you got too much of the dark orange, you could always go on top again with the light orange. Otherwise, another color that I like using to mix is white. So after I put several colors down, you can kind of take this white color and just color on top, and it helps smooth out all the colors, blends them together, and doesn't make anything too dark, just kind of helps blend them a little bit better. Once you have kind of those main colors, black, I always do last because it tends to smear and make a mess all over your picture. And so unless your bird is almost all black, I would definitely save these black parts for last. If your bird has some white on top of the black, I still like to color the whole thing black, and then like these little parts on the wing that are white, I'm just gonna take the white and really press hard on top of the black, and the white will still show up. If you're having trouble with your white, if it really gets dirty, you could always color it on a scratch paper or on your messy mat to kind of clean it off, and then you get a better area that you can go back and color a little bit more. For this little part, I guess is orange, I still gotta color that in. On the head here, since this is all black, I would fill in the whole head except for the eye, kind of go around the eye, and then once you get that part filled in, you can do the eye and the beak. As far as the branch goes, I would color in the whole branch. I'm going right over the feet because it is much easier to add the feet now that I know where I'm drawing them with oil pastel, just right on top of the oil pastel. That is a much easier way to do the feet. For the anything in the background, we're not coloring in the whole background. We are only just adding oil pastels to the details. So don't color in the background, just kind of color your bird and like the branch or the stump. Now that I've got the whole bird colored, I am gonna use a black and maybe some other colors to kind of outline. Unlike coloring your bird when you're doing the outline, this part we can press a little softer with the oil pastel so the outline doesn't get too thick. You just want enough to kind of cover up your pencil lines, and then maybe to add a little detail, so this looks like the feathers on the wings. Maybe add some black to look like the texture on your branches. You could also use different colors besides black, like maybe add a little dark green on your leaves to show the stems of the leaves. Step to make our bird, we are going to do a watercolor technique called wet on wet watercolor. So I've got water and my watercolors. To do why we're doing wet on wet is we want it to kind of be a blurred background, just like it is on the photo, which puts the emphasis visually on the bird instead of the background. These are some examples of what wet on wet looks like. So you want those colors to kind of mix and mingle together. Without the water on wet, then it would just kind of look like stripes or dots. So using the water really helps those colors mix. So to do the wet on wet, we're not going to do the whole background. We're just going to get kind of one area wet at a time. So you want to get it kind of nice and wet so that you can see the water on your paper. You can tell that is where I got my all wet with just plain old water. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of use greens and blues to look like there's some leaves in the background, but I'm not actually painting leaves. I'm just doing blobs of watercolor, and I'm going to let that watercolor mix and do its own thing. You don't want to overly kind of push or scrub your paper with your brush, or you're going to end up making a hole. So I'm just kind of blobbing along color and then letting it sit will I paint another area. So I'm just mixing blues and greens to kind of make a background like that. Once I get one area painted, again, just leave it be and then get another area wet, and I would just continue until the whole background is painted. Here is an example of a bird that I did with the wet on wet background. So this one I kind of did blues and purples to show that. Here's another example of a loon painted with like a sunset in the background and then water on the bottom, since loons mostly are in water. This also is kind of fun because you can focus on cool colors and warm colors for the sunset. So enjoy painting those bird backgrounds.